Estate.
Good evening, I'm Gillian Findlay and welcome to the Fifth Estate. Sometime within the next few weeks, one of the most notorious criminals in this country will be released from prison after serving a sentence that many still believe was far too lenient for the crime she committed. Karla Homolka, along with her then-husband Paul Bernardo, murdered 3 young women, one of them her own sister. Bernardo will likely spend the rest of his life in prison, but Karla Homolka struck a plea bargain deal with the Ontario Crown. In exchange for help convicting Bernardo, she received a far lighter sentence. Several years ago, the Fifth Estate investigated that deal and raised many serious questions about how and why it was made. But before we begin, a warning. Some of the subject matter of our story is very disturbing. Parents are advised that what follows is not suitable for children, and some adults may find it distressing too. The reporter for the Fifth Estate is Trish Wood.
Dear Wendy, I'm letting my bangs grow. After all, I want to look my absolute best when I go to court and see Paul. I want him to drool when he sees me.
All eyes are now on accused killer Paul Bernardo in a downtown
The jury will hear from Karla Homolka.
In July 1995, Paul Bernardo went on trial in Toronto for the abduction, rape, and murder of teenagers Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French.
Videotapes said to depict chilling...
The prosecution's star witness, his former wife, Karla Homolka, already in prison for her part in those crimes and in the death of her sister.
It's all part of a deal she struck with the Crown in exchange for one thing: her testimony against Paul Bernardo.
Homolka's appearance has always belied the seriousness of her crimes, and so does her demeanor. In police interview tapes obtained by the Fifth Estate, she describes her role as both victimizer and victim.
If I didn't turn the water tap off completely, he'd hit me. If I didn't say the right thing, he'd hit me. He held knives to my throat. He told me I better watch my back. He said, always watch your back with me. Her feet were tied with that electrical cord that he had used to kill Leslie. And there was electrical cord around her neck. He anally raped her and then he strangled her after he was done. It stands out really clear in my mind because the night before I left him, he did the exact same thing to me, only he didn't kill me.
This was the Karla Homolka presented by police and prosecutors, a victim deserving of leniency. Homolka also convinced a legion of psychiatrists that she had committed unspeakable crimes only because she was battered into it by an abusive husband. Leniency she got through a controversial plea bargain endorsed by Ontario's Attorney General. The arrangement was made in secret by men whose interests coincided. As a result, her psychiatric assessments were never tested in court. If they'd been publicly scrutinized, we might have had a glimpse of a different Karla Homolka, the one who appears when those psychiatric diagnoses are stripped away. Dr. Fred Berlin is an authority on criminal behavior.
I don't accept the battered women's syndrome. That's not what this was about. This is about innocent people suffering, people who had done absolutely nothing that would justify Karla lashing out or doing something that would hurt them. To make the leap from being battered and getting back at your batterer to killing innocent victims is a leap that I'm not prepared to make.
I considered her to be very dangerous.
Mary Hall was a Crown prosecutor involved in the case.
I had some real doubts about the battered spouse syndrome and the fact that she had been acting under duress in relation to what she admitted she did.
Karla Homolka is an enigma, seemingly able to conjure a range of personalities. Police, prosecutors, and psychiatrists saw a vulnerable young woman. And a half a dozen confidential psychiatric reports explained her criminal behavior by suggesting she'd been terrorized into committing crimes she'd found abhorrent. One of those reports was done by Dr. Andrew Malcolm. He suggested Bernardo had Homolka under his spell almost from the beginning.
She was a naive, simple, innocent, helpless child who was impressed by what her parents thought of her catch and what her little girlfriends thought of her catch. She was overwhelmed by this fellow.
But people close to her remember a strong-willed Karla Homolka, an independent young woman who worked part-time in a pet store. In her high school clique called the Diamond Club, Homolka was #1, according to member Kathy Ford and her husband Alex.
She was the tough one of the of our friendships, and you didn't want to get in a fight with Karla because she was going to win.
Leader or follower, Ms. Homolka?
Leader.
Leader.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It was an unlikely setting for a romantic encounter, a pet food show at a suburban hotel. But it was here that 17-year-old Homolka met a handsome 23-year-old junior accountant named Paul Bernardo. The attraction was instant, says Homolka's co-worker, Jenny Black.
Oh, he was her knight in shining armor. We looked at him like that. He treated her well. He took care of her. He took her places. He just seemed to be wonderful for her. She was in love, head over heels.
Their home video documents a holiday Bernardo and Homolka took in Florida in the summer of 1988. They look like any other happy, goofy young couple in love. Later, Homolka would tell her psychiatrist Bernardo was already tightening his grip and that he'd begun hitting her.
Karla told me that she had been physically abused by him, but a very important element in that abuse is psychological abuse, which doesn't leave any marks on the body whatsoever. She was rendered helpless by him in the course of the first 6 or 7 or so months of their association.
But in what way was she rendered helpless by him in the first 7 months? Because people said they were in love and happy together, and she was living at home. How did he render her helpless in the first 7 months?
She became dependent on him. He controlled her. He advised her that she was worthless.
But Jenny Black says she saw no signs of it.
No, I didn't notice anything, no. I was happy for her.
And did she seem happy?
She seemed very happy. And he seemed very happy. They were all over each other when they were together. They were just together.
They certainly were. But Homolka convinced her psychiatrist she'd been sexually abused by Bernardo, suggesting their kinky sex life was not consensual.
The P4W.
Their friends at the time remember it differently.
They had a little dog chain too, like a dog necklace with the little spikes on, not spikes, but little.
A dog collar.
Dog collar. And
that she wore.
Very submissive.
And interestingly enough, you'd walk into a room and in the back door would be a lace teddy and a pair of handcuffs.
Did she talk about this in a horrible way, like I hate this kind of sex we're having?
No.
What did she say about it?
It was just matter of fact.
It was just the best thing in the world.
In December 1989, the best thing in Homolka's world got better. In a rhapsodic letter to the Toronto Star, Homolka described the romantic evening by Niagara Falls when Bernardo proposed.
She wanted to marry this man. This was her man, and she was going to marry him, and that was that.
7 months before the wedding, the man who would be Homolka's perfect husband was called in by police for questioning in a series of rapes in Scarborough near Toronto. Homolka knew her future perfect husband was a perfect match for the police composite. She also knew her fiancé was obsessed with attractive teenage girls, including one Karla Homolka knew very well.